Hi. And first I want to say where we were going. We took a small weekend. Also other things started happening that got in the way of making videos. And you read the names and probably it will sound strange, but about the creation of a machine that could take off vertically, mankind thought about in ancient times. In China around the 5th century BC, there was a toy in the form of a stick with feathers attached to it. Feathers were attached to the end of the stick on 4 sides, forming a screw. Having unwrapped such a toy in the palms of one's hands, one would release it and the stick would fly up just like modern helicopters. Blueprints of such devices were created in later, for example, in the Renaissance and modern times. Curiously, many attribute the invention of the helicopter to Leonardo da Vinci, but this is a mistake. Leonardo really made a drawing of a flying machine. This apparatus was never built, and researchers of Da Vinci's legacy are still arguing about how the machine drawn by the great thinker could get off the ground. There is now an opinion that Leonardo's machine can by no means be considered a helicopter. By the way, Da Vinci's drawings were discovered much after his death. Mikhail Lomonosov, who also attempted to create a flying machine, was not aware of Leonardo's writings, and in developing his project he relied solely on his own knowledge and experience. Lomonosov's idea was to build a machine that would take off vertically and be propelled by 2 screws. The project was never finalized. By the way, Lomonosov was not working on a flying machine. His machine was not intended for manned flight. Its purpose was meteorological measurements. More precisely, there would have been its task if the idea had been realized. The French engineer Pontin d'Aimcourt went even further. He was working on a project of a machine that could be controlled by a man from inside. Such a machine would be driven by 2 propellers. The inventor, who worked in the middle of the 19th century, came very close to his goal, and it was his work that formed the basis of future successful developments. Vertical flight. The first ever successful vertical flight was made by brothers Louis and Jacques Breguet and Charles Richet, who worked with them. By the way, this flight was not piloted and the apparatus itself rose into the air on a tether. Nevertheless, August 24, 1907 can be considered as the birthday of the helicopter. Breguet brothers' machine weighed more than 500 kilograms and was equipped with 2 engines and 4 wide propellers. The machine got off the ground by half a meter and stayed in the air for about a minute. A month later, the brothers repeated the experience and their apparatus rose to a height of 1.5 meters. Simultaneously with them, their compatriot Paul Cornu worked on the helicopter project. He was destined to become the first pilot of a vertically flying machine. Cornu made his flight on November 13, 1907. He stayed in the air for 20 seconds and the flight height was 52 centimeters. The idea of manned flight caught on, and it was in this direction that the followers of French pioneers began to work. Another breakthrough happened in 1911, and this breakthrough was made by our compatriot Boris Yuriev. He created a drawing of a tilt automaton, a mechanism for helicopter propeller control. The drawing of a single-rotor aircraft with a steering propeller was published. The mechanism designed by Yuriev is still used in most modern helicopters. Further development at the beginning of the 20th century, the planet was experiencing an air boom. It was difficult for the helicopter to compete with the popularity of the airplane. The former were already furrowing the skies with all their might, while the latter existed only on paper. Many helicopter projects simply did not receive the financial support they needed. In 1922, however, the mechanic Georgy Botsat, a Russian immigrant living in the United States, was very lucky. The US Army gave him an order to produce a stable, controllable vertical takeoff machine. And Botsat created such a machine. It was able to rise to a height of 5 meters and stayed in the air for several minutes. In 1924, the Argentinian Raúl Pescara proved that the idea of helicopters was not unpromising and that such machines could stay in the air for a long time. The mechanical engineer flew his machine 736 meters. The Argentinian success was widely covered in the press, became known far beyond South America, and gave an impetus to the development of helicopter engineering. After a couple of months, the Frenchman Étienne Amachine was in the air for more than 7 minutes, flying for this time in a circle of 1,100 meters. In 1930, a group of Italian inventors designed a helicopter, which flew the same distance, but in a straight line. In our country, the first flight was made in 1932 by Alexei Cheryomukin. In the 1EA helicopter, he flew 600 meters in the air. Another 3 years passed, and Louis Breguet created an ultra-fast, for those times, machine. He was the first in history to break the speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour and put the skeptics to shame. After that, nobody doubted that helicopters really had a future. The military stopped doubting before anyone else. Already by the early 1930s, many engineers and mechanics received serious orders from them to develop such machines. And that's the story. The roller is not as informative as the one about the Venus. But I'm saying goodbye myself. I don't know when I'll see you again, but goodbye.